Welcome to the MMHP and the 989. Channeling all styles and eras of Michigan music history from the city by the bay. This podcast is sponsored by our friends at Electric Kitsch, located at 2106 Kosciuszko Avenue in Bay City, Michigan. And now, here's your host, Scott Baker.
And we're back here at Studio 163 here in Essexville. We got the Part 2 podcast of Season 3's first episode with Jen Cass. We hope you guys enjoyed the first episode as much as we did. And Jen is going to play some more music here and talk about the recording of her records, as well as a lot more backstory. And, of course, some of the greatness that she's attributed to all these years in the folk world. We hope you'll kick back, grab a drink, and relax with us. And catch Part 2 with Jen Cass. Welcome to Season 3, everybody.
And, of course, 3 years later, you've got another one out.
Right.
With John Jennings.
Yeah. And that one, I knew I wanted Accidental Pilgrimage as the title. Mm-hmm. I knew that from the beginning. But that was because I had, written a song to honor Phil Oakes, and it had that line in it. Mm-hmm. And it's actually called Standing in Your Memory, but that Accidental Pilgrimage line starts that song off. And I the minute I wrote that song, I knew that's my title. And so then that was the one where everything kind of fell in around the title that we knew would be there,
But it's Dear Mr. President that got all the attention.
For sure. Yeah, that was my big hit.
Yeah. Well, I have to ask you this. Did you get much blowback on that? Because even though it wasn't super critical of George W. Bush, he was the president.
He was, yeah. And that's a true story. That was based on an actual soldier who was writing home saying, I don't understand, and he and I got to be a little, in contact because of it. But it was amazing. I mean, I had it on one hand opened a lot of doors for me because there was a whole group of people who thought, here it is. Somebody's finally doing what Phil Oakes did and Dylan did at his best. And what, there's other people too along the way that have picked up that mantle and run. And so it was, it was amazing. The doors had opened. That album busted the doors open for me to go on the Phil Oakes song nights and meet Sonny Oakes and, became great friends with Greg Greenway and Joe Jenks and Pat Wichter, Reggie Harris, just some incredible people that regularly do that tour.
Well, what was the criticism like?
Well, that was fun. They in Texas and in parts of other parts of the South, my record was steamrolled with the Dixie Chicks. And there were a couple other people too there, but it was incredible to me that this tiny little songwriter from Michigan, I was with the Dixie Chicks getting steamrolled by a DJ, but they literally ran my CD over with a steamroller.
Wow. And
I was banned, and it was nuts. It was completely crazy.
Oh man, what a crazy time.
And it's only worse today.
100%.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
We have intentionally, with great intention over the course of many years, the powers that be have divided us further and further.
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt about it.
Until we are no longer able to see each other as human. We just see each other as the differences instead of what we have in common. And it's a shame because I have great friends. In fact, I lost a great friend for many, many years because I could not get behind George W. Bush, and I couldn't get behind Mitt Romney, though he later proved himself to be, kind of a honorable person with
a voice of reason.
Voice of reason and complete
Yes.
insanity. But that wasn't my candidate. And I had a very good lifelong friend, and thank God we've healed this rift. But we could not see eye to eye on the politics at that time, and she just said, I don't want to be friends.
Wow.
And that was that told a story that it's really being told often now, but it was kind of the first time that had ever happened to me where someone said, your politics are so offensive to me that I can't be your friend. I was the first person that ever held her son when he was born.
Yeah, the difference between Democrats and Republicans, never used to be that great.
No, and my father was a Republican and my mother was a Democrat. She would have been a hippie if her parents hadn't kept her completely in check all of her life, but my grandpa was a Republican until much later in his life when things started to get nuts. And he kind of woke up one day and said, "That's not my party. Like that isn't my party." And he voted for Bill Clinton, and he was a Democrat. And if you asked him, he was a lifelong Democrat.
Oh, that went that fast.
Though we know that wasn't true. So yeah, I mean, it's gotten insane the things that we will wedge between us and other humans to divide us. It's nuts.
Yeah.
That microscope got really bad over the last 4 years. So that's so unfortunate.
You know, you haven't done a solo release.
Not lately.
Yeah, since 2006. But you have got an album out with the Lucky Nows.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's with your husband, right?
It is. That's my sweet husband, sweet Eric Janetsky.
And he's doing, I'm assuming that's Eric's vocals.
Some of it is. Everybody in that band sings and everybody in that band writes. So, you know, it is just a incredible fortune. I've got Mike Robertson, who, you know, in so many bands, I can't even begin to tell you all.
Back in the day in Michigan, they know him as Mr. Hyde. He did Joe Satriani kind of stuff. And then he went on to do Maybe August with Roscoe, who's in the band too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting how that came together too, because, you know, Eric and I just played as a duo for a while, and we were out playing Saginaw on Stage, actually, which comes up again tomorrow. Yeah.
Oh, we'll all be there tomorrow too.
Yeah. So Saginaw on Stage came up, and John Patrikas was wandering around with the fiddle looking for something to do, you know, as he is often doing.
Yep.
And he said, "Hey, can I sit in with you?" And we're like, "Well, heck yeah. John Patrikas, come on up." You know, so John was great and super fun to work with. He's just a delightful human. And so he became, you know, the third member of the Lucky Nows, and then we picked up Jim Nelson for a while, and he played accordion and some other stuff, and then we just kind of, you know, we kind of went a different direction. We had a show at the Arc coming up, and Eric said, "Why don't we have a band? You know, why don't we actually have a band?" And I said, I've never played with a band. You know, like you're all the band I need, darling.
Yeah.
And you know, he said, "I think we should do it. I think we could get some really good people." And he said, "Let me ask Mike Robertson." He'd known Mike forever. Yeah. Mike actually taught him guitar. And I was like, "Great. If we could get Mike, that'd be spectacular." So Eric called up Mike, and Mike said, "Yeah, that sounds like great fun." And so then it was me and Patrikas and Mike and Eric on our way to play the Arc. And we were talking about the show. You know, it's coming up in December. Everybody come out. It's going to be great. You know, this new incarnation of Lucky Nows. And it was all on Facebook, you know. So Roscoe gets on and writes a little comment like, "All my friends are playing the Arc and I don't get to play." It was like that. And Dan Patrick was in the band at that point. He's
in the promo photo.
Yeah, he's moved to South Carolina now. But you know, Dan Patrick was in. So Roscoe just basically commented on Facebook that, you know, he was feeling jelly because he didn't get to go play the Arc with his buddies. And I was like, "You want to play?" You know, Roscoe and I talk about this all the time, that, you know, I thought Roscoe was so far above my league. Like, there was no way that he would want to play with me. I just thought it was insane. And Roscoe was thinking, she's so far out of my league. I could never play in a band with her, you know, but I have always admired Roscoe, and I've loved all the work that he's done on everybody else's records. And it was such I just couldn't believe that he wanted to play. And, you know, so he said, "Do you wanna?" And he said, "Yeah, I do." And so then the 6-piece Lucky Nows was born. We lost Dan pretty quickly after that when he moved, but the 5-piece has stayed for quite some time now. And everybody brings something to the table. So
where did you record the album?
We recorded it right here in Bay City with Andy Reid at Reid Recording.
Okay, very cool.
And I got to tell you, you can put that up against anything John Jennings did. Andy, you know, knocks it out of the park. He's spectacular at what he does. So I'm really proud of that record. I'm proud of the way that we came together as a band to make it. I'm proud of the way that we collaborated. It was, you know, no one was bossing anybody around. It was just, you know, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? Until it became, you know, organically better and better, you know, until we were really happy with it. So we put that one out. That charted too a little bit. And, you know, it was just a great record, great fun to make.
You started another one.
Yeah. And we will get back to that, Andy Reid. We're going to get back to that. But we have we have too much material. You know, COVID came and everybody got knocked into their houses, and that put the big pause on it. But we have written a lot, and there's a lot that we've written that I'm super proud of, and I'm excited to get those out. But part of what happened to me during COVID, right at the very beginning, is my grandpa, who is my person, died from COVID. I'm not going to cry on the radio show. And everything got blocked. Like, everything I'd been writing didn't matter. Who cares? And my grandpa died, so it doesn't matter, you know. And I couldn't do anything. I was just in such a depression. And Eric just kept pushing. Let's go record something. Let's just do something. Let's go record something. But I got my mind wrapped around this idea that I couldn't record anything unless it was a song for my grandpa. And I hadn't written it. You know, so I finally wrote it. I cannot possibly play it for you right now, but it's called Syracuse, and that's the name of the street that my grandparents lived on my whole life. And I really wanted to record that, you know, so off we went to re-recording, and Andy has just given it everything he's got in the world. He's putting everything behind it, and he's, you know, like he does. He just pours his soul into everything he does. But it hurt so bad for me to be playing that song at that point that everything he did, I just blew it up. I still feel terrible about it. But, you know, we've, of course, talked about this and worked it all out. But it was just, I wanted it to be a tribute to this man who is just this giant, you know, in my life. There's, how do you do that justice? And so I couldn't, it wasn't perfect enough, you know. And it's interesting because I left feeling really bad about the song, and I hadn't listened to it again until last night.
Oh, really?
And I pulled it up because I thought, I wonder how that actually was. And I got to tell you, it's pretty damn great.
That's good.
It's pretty damn great.
So is this going to be a Lucky Nows, or are you going to a solo?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'll ever do another solo record. I love my guys, and I love my sweet husband, and I love working with him, and like none of it has as much meaning for me anymore as when I'm doing it with them. You know, they're just the greatest group of guys, and Roscoe, you know, gets me, reminds me so much of John Jennings, like has that same quality of, you know, just
authenticity and stuff.
Yeah, and just like, let's try it. You know, let's try it that way. Let's try it this other way. You know, just let's do it. And, you know, JJ used to say that you sit at playback. And, you know, I'm sitting around with Robbie Magruder and John Carroll and John Jennings, the people who, you know, are played all of Mary Chapin Carpenter's albums and played with a lot of just great session players / professional musicians. And I'm, you know, Jen Cass from Michigan. And you listen to the playback, and it was like magic happened. You know, you couldn't imagine how it got from the way that you played it in your living room with a guitar to the way that it was when it was fleshed out with those incredible people playing your music and getting behind your idea. And JJ, we'd listen to everything, and I'd be all teary, and, you know, John Carroll would hold my hand, and we'd jump up and do interpretive dancing to kind of like shake off the emotion. And we get to the end of the song, and everybody would look to JJ. That was, you know, we all knew what we thought, but we wanted to know what he thought. So everyone would look to JJ first, and he'd go, "Sounds like music to me."
That's great.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. There are things that I've written that I think really do translate well into solo land. There's a couple of songs I've written that are so extraordinarily personal, but also still important songs that I wouldn't probably do them with a band. So it may be that there's a point where I get to, you know, enough material.
Never say never.
Really, yeah. I would never say never for sure. But I love working with.
I do remember just when you met Eric and everything was going on, you were also forming a lot of bringing in a lot of national acts.
Absolutely.
Like Joe and to Bay City, to church here, and we did some. You did some shows. I did a few shows with you for the promotion for one of the records, and I remember you turned on a whole other thought process because they were starting to filter to you now,
right?
And then the wedding came and everything kind of moved on with you and Eric, obviously. But you at that point your ball was rolling in the Jen Cass lane pretty good.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So
I mean, I had at that point I was doing the Phil Oak Song Nights. I started those in 2009, and that put me with, like I said, with Greg Greenway and Reggie Harris and Sonny Oaks, and God, there were some great people. Magpie played those. Just really amazing people. And, we were playing Old Town School of Folk in Chicago, and then the next night we'd be at the Hurdy-Gurdy, and it was amazing. It was the venues that were, just out of reach. They always felt so out of reach, and all of a sudden I'm standing on those stages, and I'm holding my own, holding my own, which, that was amazing to me, that I'd gotten to the point where I could stand on a stage with, Reggie Harris and feel like I belonged there, So, yeah, those were great years, and I had a really good time with that. And, it was a time of self-discovery for me as an artist, is when my confidence got to a place where I felt like I had earned it. I wasn't riding anybody's coattails anymore. I wasn't, JJ was not opening the doors for me anymore. I had propped them open myself, and now I was holding it together with just what I was writing, and it was a really great era. And then, right on the heels of that, along came Eric.
Yeah.
And
a whole other focus for you.
Well, and it was. I mean, I think that people who knew us both were like, well, obviously they'll just write a million songs and put out a million records, and they'll sit in their living room playing music all day long, and it's going to be amazing. And honestly, we don't do that. We've got 5 kids between us, and we both have day jobs, and they're important day jobs where we're doing really good hard work. But I can't imagine coming home to anybody but him, for every aspect of my life. And I don't think we stopped each other from any of the things that we were, all the tracks that we were on at that point. It wasn't that we stopped each other from those tracks, it's that we found another one that we did together.
Yeah. Well, you get to watch the kids blossom beyond. Sure. I mean, I got to see it from a distance too.
What's wild is, I've got my two kids are both performers. So Julia is one of the most unique singers I have ever heard. She's got a beautiful voice, and it's she sounds like somebody just pulled her out of 1920. She's got this way of singing that has it just you can't imagine it's coming out of a 17-year-old kid, And then Red, my son, is more of a rocker. And honestly, if I hadn't met Eric, I don't know what that kid would have become, because he needed somebody to say, yeah, let's listen to some Metallica, and it wasn't going to be me,
Right.
But the things that he was interested in, the songs that really spoke to him, were songs that, Eric loves and, grew up playing. And so Red would come down and go, oh my God, I learned this amazing song. It's called Stairway to Heaven, and Eric would go, I gotcha, man. And he'd pull out his guitar and, teach it to him. So when Red is performing at Saginaw on Stage as well.
Yes.
And it's just wild to, now it's like, I get to sit in the audience and go, I made that.
Yes.
I made that.
Does your son have a band, or is he playing solo?
He plays with the Major Chords for Minors band.
Oh, okay.
So, we're really lucky, because the person who is now in charge of Major Chords is Lisa Purchase Kelly, and she is my kid's basically stepmother. She is the long-term partner of my ex-husband, John. And she loves that Saginaw music scene with all her heart, and she has breathed, life into that program through with everything she has in this world. And it's been really interesting to watch, that, these kids that we collectively raise and collectively love and, do our best to co-parent, they've found a place that really does fit right in the middle of those worlds. And it's pretty cool to watch.
Oh, yeah. And that's worth the sidestep. I mean, as being a dad myself, and most of us here have children, it's like, you got to take that breath, and it does put a halt to things, so it gives you that different avenue. And they're at the age now where the blossoms are happening, so you got to promote it.
And it goes so fast.
And you guys also opened up a venue.
We did. Yeah, we were sitting at this is the craziest story. Eric was thinking, I've been in Saginaw my whole life. I might like to live somewhere else. And we were like, well, where would we live? I don't know. And I had transferred down to Genesee County, and I was prosecuting down there. And so we thought, well, let's look around there, just for fun. We'll just take a peek. And so we put these parameters into realtor.com, and we really thought if we're actually going to move these kids and uproot the family and do something different, then we want water. Like, we both love water. We both love to fish and goof around on the water. And so we put this parameters in. And so we're sitting at breakfast one morning at Tony's, and ding, my phone goes, and I look at it, and there's this big yellow ancient looking farmhouse and in the middle of nowhere, and there's like nothing around it. And I'm scrolling through it thinking, like, how did I get this notice? There's no water here. Clearly it's a cornfield behind me. And if you scroll through the descriptive, it says, so much land, you'll feel like you're on water.
That's wild. I never heard that. They
completely cheated me. But I'm flipping through the pictures anyway, because it's a beautiful old house. And we get to the outbuildings, and there's, this big old stone shed with all this old farm equipment in it, and there's a little garden shed, and then there's this other barn, and you scroll through the picture of the barn, and they've already converted it to a venue. It's got a stage, it's got lighting, it's got sound, it's got the whole thing, and we're like, this is insane, this cannot be. So of course we went and called the realtor from Tony's and said, can we see this house? And he said, yeah, can you be there in an hour and a half? And we said, yes, we can. And we went, and we were like, well, it's ours. We have to buy this. We put in a contingent offer, which never works, ever. But the guy, we went to see it the first time ourselves. Second time we went out with kids, and the guy who owned the house was standing there waiting for us, which you're not allowed to do. You can't just go to the showings. That's not what you do. Mm-hmm. But here's the guy standing. He's kind of like going through the mail, standing on the porch. And I said, are you the homeowner? He said, yeah, I'm Greg. It's nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too. And he said, I know I'm not supposed to be here, but I just got to ask you a couple questions, because we rebuilt this house. It was condemned. It was falling apart, and we completely rebuilt it right from the studs, and we love it with all of our hearts. But we got to the point where we want to move, and we want to be close to our kids, and they're on the other side of the state, and we're just not going to let it go to anybody. So do you have kids? And we said, yeah, we've got 5. He said, do you have dogs? I said, yeah, we've got 2 of them. And he said, do you play music? And we said, yes, I have 3 albums out, and we have one that we're doing together, and Eric's been in all these bands. And he was like, I got to show you the barn. So realtor's not even there yet. He walks us out to the barn, opens it up, and, shows us everything, turns on all the lights and the sound and everything. And so when we put the contingent offer through, he said he would hold it open as long as it took, that he was going to sell it to us and no one else.
Oh.
So what was his background? Yeah. That they made the barn into a venue? He's an
engineer, but he had played guitar all of his life, and he had a band, and it was called Group Therapy. And Group Therapy would practice in the barn, and they would play gigs and have people come over because but it was just to goof around for the most part. But he loved that barn, and I've never seen anyone be more proud to show a thing that they made to anybody. He was just delighted with all the things he'd thought of out there. And he wants to come back and play it. Now we've converted it to Farmhouse Folk, and we've changed some things, but a lot of it's the same as he left it.
It's awesome.
Including some of the decor is just exactly what he left there.
Farmhouse Folk, and when you guys book shows, they're intimate. And they're heartwarming, and they're part of the family kind of gigs.
34 people right on top of each other. But, we've been lucky because of, all the touring that I did and all the things that Eric did along the way, that, if we see somebody coming, like Peter Mulvey's coming through, we call Peter Mulvey and go, want to come play our barn? And he goes, okay, can we eat Mexican food and, drink coffee in the morning? Yes. Okay, then I'll come play your barn. So it's been great. We've had some really amazing acts come through, and it's... it reminds you of why you loved it in the first place. Like when my dad took me through the magical doors of the Ark, and there was somebody playing on that stage, and the light hit them just right, and they connected with you. And I remember feeling when I was a little girl like I was the only person in the room. Whoever was on that stage was talking right to me. And that's how it feels there.
Yeah,
it feels absolutely. Like that intimate and that close. And it just reminds me how much I love live music and as a fan.
This podcast is sponsored by our friends at Electric Kitsch. located at 2106 Kosciuszko Avenue in Bay City, Michigan. They offer new and used records, including local to Michigan original vinyl and CDs, as well as clothing, electronic equipment, funky household items, music gear, and stringed instrument repair. You can find them on the web or call 989-402-1411.
Can people buy tickets to
For
see these?
sure, yeah. I mean, we this year we're not doing shows until the fall. I don't think because we're doing Nor'easter. Eric's in charge of booking Nor'easter Fest in Mayo, Michigan this year. He took over for Craig Carrick, and he just poured everything he had into that. So we didn't book the spring. Can't do it in the summer because it's just too hot in there.
Yeah.
But we do it spring and fall. So in the fall, we got a bunch of people coming through. And it'll be up on Facebook, and we're working on...
There's a little link to buy tickets through their ads.
We put them through Eventbrite.
You have a Facebook page, I'm assuming.
Yeah, Farmhouse Folk Facebook page.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to put that on definitely when we promote the show, too. We'll plug that.
Yeah, that sounds great.
You've had Jill Jack there a few times.
We've had, oh my gosh, we had Kitty Donahoe. We had Jill Jack. We've had, oh my God, Billy Brandt. We had Jen Siggett and Sam Corbin and Peter Mulvey. So many. I mean, I'm obviously forgetting a bunch of people.
Who's the one that's coming in that had to get canceled because of COVID? She was from down Nashville way, and she's a sweetheart.
It breaks my heart. We had Sarah Peacock coming. And she wrote a song called The Cool Kids, which is another one. If you're listening and you don't know that song, immediately go listen to it. There is not a song in this world that makes me cry more than that song. And I wanted so badly to have her come, and I thought there's no way Sarah Peacock's going to come to Farmhouse Folk and play for 34 people. And I reached out to her on Facebook. Doesn't know me from Adam, and I said, this is what we're doing, and there's not a lot of people, and there's not really, a guarantee of a whole lot of money, but I love your music, and it would mean so much. And she was like, heck yeah, let's do it. So she was going to kick off our season. She was coming in April 2020, and then the world shut down.
Yeah.
Cool thing is, though, we booked her for Nor'easter. So
cool.
I will finally get to meet her and see her live at Nor'easter Fest this year.
Yeah. So you guys turned me on to her, and I was like, whoa.
She's incredible.
Yeah.
And Christine Haverilla. I mean, there's so many people.
Well, look at their backlog, going all the way back to 91 or whatever you say at the Ann Arbor. Now, Fred, you were in Ann Arbor back during those eras.
I moved to Ann Arbor in 91.
Well, then we were there together.
He ran School Kid Records.
That's how I know you.
The label.
Yeah. That's how I know you. When I saw you come in. Yeah. Love me some School Kids.
You guys probably have a lot of shared stories that you're just realizing tonight, but Fred's given us a lot of background on School Kids, and we had a show actually on School Kids once too, but his whole 90s era is all Ann Arbor based, and that's funny that you started
that's my era there too, with my closest friend in the singer-songwriter gig at that time was Jim Roll. And Jim Roll has a studio now, and still plays out. But that was such a great era of music, and there was a great era of music in a lot of places, right? Nirvana and all that was happening in Seattle, and in Ann Arbor we were doing kind of a folk revolution. So
Fred he's a player himself, washboard, and who were you with? You just put up some videos the other day, Steven.
Well, that was with Steven Springer.
Steven Springer
in Ann Arbor, Trinidad Triple E Steel Band.
You bet.
Yeah, absolutely. You were in that project. Then you went out with Lazy Lester eventually and became...
Well, I was with Lazy Lester for 34 years.
Yeah.
In between all the other stuff.
Yeah. That's very cool.
Yeah. Wow.
Very, very cool.
Well, thank you, Jen. I'm trying to think. Was there... I guess the only question I haven't been able to ask you is, as we tie our show into Michigan music, is there other, and you've got quite the band and quite the history of Michigan. Is there anything that anybody you've shared the stage with that you'd like to see again that you haven't maybe kept in contact with, or that blew your mind and you're like, man, I always wanted to track them back down and play with them again, or get them to come to play your folk fest? Or
it's interesting because that was really how we booked the first season. Is I thought, who is it that completely blew my mind, over the years? And we were really fortunate to get almost every single one of them to come that first season. But, the ones that I think of the most are in 1999, I was really lucky to get on the Indie Girl Tour, which Holly Figueroa O'Reilly organized. And I was living in Seattle at the time for a little bit. And I got to play with Kelly Bradley and Holly Figueroa O'Reilly and Antiquity Rising and, a bunch of really awesome, female bands. There were no men on that tour. It was just a bunch of women. And, we didn't know what we were doing. We would book a gig in New York City, and then we'd book a gig in Ohio. And then the next night we'd go to Philly. We did not, across, and we'd be 11 hours in the car to get to this gig in Ohio and then drive right back to Philly because we just didn't know what we were doing. But we were really, really good. It was a whole bunch of really good female artists. And so, it took off despite the fact that we didn't know how to play in a tour and we didn't, know how to do any of that stuff. Holly did a fantastic job of putting people together who really excited the audiences and got people going. So, we played Great Blue Heron Fest and some, East Coast stuff that's pretty well known. And, a lot of those women went on to do incredible things. And so those are the people I think about most when I think about who I'd like to play with.
And they're from outside of Michigan, right?
They're from all over the country.
Yeah, all over. Yeah,
we applied from everywhere for that. Yeah. And they're everywhere. I think Makira Small in Nashville still writes killer songs. I think probably the number one person on my bucket list right now, there's two. One is Jeffrey Foucault.
Oh, yeah.
If I could get him to play anywhere, I mean, honest to God, if anywhere, we've traveled 8-9 hours to go see him, driven to Wisconsin to see him. He's such an incredible writer, and he connects with the same way that I try to connect, as does his wife, Chris Delmhorst. They write a story, and the rest of it falls in around it. It's incredible. But here's the other person I think of is a person named Carrie Cooper, and she's a Texas-based artist. She's now in Nashville, but she wrote a song called Suzanne, and it talks about a person who was, at the age that I was going through, where I was going through my divorce. This song was out, and it was about just wanting to run away with the circus, basically. And she went out. There was a day in Texas where it's snowing, right, which doesn't happen very much there, but it started to snow, and she said, I'm going to go out in the craziest red coat I can find. I'm going to stand in my yard, and I'm going to play that song, and I'm going to put it out in the world. And that found its way to me, and I really, really want her to come play. And we've gotten to be friends over the years, which was highly unexpected. But, I wrote a song just recently that I couldn't think of anybody in the world that I wanted to send it to but her. I just thought, this is the person who needs to hear this first. And I sent it to her, and she, said it's perfection, and you have to put it out, But to have that connection with people, it's not because of, your politics are the same, or your life history is the same, or you're the same age, or from the same place. It's because you are open to seeing the world through the eyes of other people, right? You're open to being a professional observer of people, and an empath, and a person who cares about the ways that other people feel in the world and move through the world. And she's such a great channeler of personalities, and she writes them into these beautiful songs. So I'm gonna get Carrie Cooper to come play.
Awesome.
Farmhouse Folk.
Awesome.
It's happening.
That's so cool.
And I'm gonna sing backup.
That's great. And I know you probably have 100 stories here, and I want you to share one more with our podcast listeners. But being the number 2 for John Jennings, give us a little bit about his number 1 and your time with her.
Mary Chapin Carpenter is spectacular. She was a huge influence on me. And it's interesting because I was kind of tested by JJ. I had sent my stuff to him, and he said, it's pretty good. Send me some more, and that went back and forth for a while. And then he said, what are you doing tonight? And I said, I don't know. What am I doing tonight, JJ? And he said, well, we're playing the Pier in Seattle. I left you tickets at the door. Come on up. All right. So I drive up to the Pier in Seattle. John and I were together at that point. John and I went up to see Mary Chapin, and they left us, tickets and backstage passes at the door. And it was, I did not know this at the time, but it was a test, because Chapin does not like to be, she wants to approach people in her own way, right? She doesn't want people to bombard her and come up and go, oh my God, I love your music. And, that just she gets very uncomfortable. And I knew that. So I came in and I acknowledged there's JJ, there's Chapin, and I stood on the other side of the room and I kind of nodded, there they are, and I, went over by the pier where the water was and I waited for them. And that's part of the reason why JJ produced me, because I was so cool that day as to not bum rush Chapin and be like, oh my God, I love your music.
Yes. Although I remember the stories you told me, like you'd flip her album over and read all her credits, and
that's how I found JJ. Yeah. That when I wanted to record and I wanted to do a more professional job, and I flipped. I went and I pulled all my CDs out and I flipped them over, and here's an Indigo Girl CD, and who's playing on it? John Jennings. Here's Mary Chapin Carpenter, who I absolutely love, Mary Chapin. Who's on this? Oh my God, it was produced by John Jennings. And it was like over and over again. I'm like, he's on everything. He's on everything. And the only other person that I could find that was on just a ton of my records was a guy named Dave Maddox, who's a drummer, right? And I'm like, well, I should probably start with the guy who actually produces records, right? That's where I should go. And so I just emailed JJ out of the blue, like with... I did not know him. He did not know me. Hey, listen, I'm a singer-songwriter out of Michigan. And I really, at the time I was on the West Coast in Seattle, how does it happen that someone like you produces a CD? And he was like, well, let me tell you all about it. He was super nice. He responded right away. And we started swapping music back and forth. But it's interesting because when we did Accidental Pilgrimage, the guy who had been the drummer on Skies Burning Red was not available. And JJ's like, I'm just, I'll bring in somebody else. It'll be fine. Don't worry. It's going to be great. And so I walk into the first day of the session for Accidental Pilgrimage, and there's Dave Maddox.
and that name goes all the way back to Fairport Convention.
Yeah. He was in Fairport Convention. He played with everyone.
Yeah.
And as diverse as, obviously Fairport Convention, but Joan Armatrading to the Dream Academy and everything in between, So he's just a spectacular human and a spectacular player. And when we did the Lucky Now CD, we, listen, everyone loves Donnie, right? Donnie Brown's a spectacular, wonderful human and a great drummer. And I was like, you know what? I just want one little connection to JJ. I didn't have him on there was nothing that was his left. We had nothing that we could give Andy and say, just let's work off this. There's nothing left of him. But what I had was Dave Maddox.
Oh, that's how that worked.
And I thought, I'm going to call up Dave and see if he'll just play on the record anyway. And he said, he's a sweet little British dude that,
he lives
he lives in Massachusetts. Yeah. And he was absolutely, you send it out, we'll do it, And so that was, I assume probably as time goes by, we probably won't do that anymore. But it was like I needed to have that one tie back.
Yeah. Thank you. The little thank you to the
to
tie.
Have that moment, like finish the moment, that I didn't get to finish. And that was the way that I did it. Having DM on that recording brought it back full circle in a way that made me feel that I'd finished the record with JJ.
Can you give us one more tune before we leave here?
Well, maybe, but now you have to be talking about stuff that's making me cry.
I know, and that's why I'm thinking, maybe you could give us one from the record, the most recent, or a new one.
Oh, from the Lucky Notes? Yeah, sure, I can do that. I want to do?
Or give us a connection to to the story.
Here's what I want to do. I want to retune, so just everybody bear with me. I would not know this tuning, but for having been on the Phil Oakes Song Nights. So it kind of ties all my stories together, right? So this is C9 tuning, which is Greg Greenway's tuning. Okay, so Old City Hall. For those who are listening and are not from Bay City, we have a building in the kind of downtown section of Bay City that used to be the City Hall. And now it's a restaurant, and it's called Old City Hall, and they keep the wine in the basement of Old City Hall, and that's where the jail cells used to be. Yep. And there are stories, the whole time that I lived in Bay City, there were stories about, things jumping off the shelves down there, and, stuff being left on tables that wasn't supposed to be there, and all this creepy stuff. And I didn't really know much more about it than that, but I was talking with John Lamb, who's another great Michigan singer-songwriter.
Yeah.
And
we recorded him.
Did you? I love me some John Lamb. Love him. And he gave me a song assignment. He said, well, you're from Bay City, and I know the story, and here it is. And he researched it. And he said that what had happened was there was a person who was the favorite prostitute of all of the powerful men in Bay City. And they didn't call her by her name. They called her by where she came from, which was Canada. And so she was nameless, other than where she'd been from. And she, was with all of those big, powerful men. And it became, over time, the men figured out that she knew all the secrets, right? Everybody's everything. She had it all, and she had all the information in one place, and she was going to be able to take down every single one of them. And once they figured it out, they just knew they had to kill her, right? They had to kill her. Well, conveniently, she had narcolepsy. So what they did is they knew this, right? It seems like I'm making this up as I'm going along, but this is actually true. So they arrested her, and they put her down in those jail cells down at the bottom of the restaurant where the wine is stored now. And they waited for her to go into a narcoleptic sleep, and they buried her alive. So she haunts Old City Hall. Yeah, right? I know. So that's the actual story that
Where's she buried?
I don't know, Scott. Let's go look at
That would be a new one. That would be a search for our next
for
haunted
sure. Yeah,
Bay City.
Canada.
Yeah. Where's she at?
Next haunted Bay City, right? For sure. So he told me the story, and it connected with me on a couple different levels, because it was I just thought this, to be silenced in that way, and that really is one of the worst things I can imagine, being buried alive, right? Terrible. Knowing you're going to die, and it just made me crazy. So I connected on that level, but I also connected because, I have also found myself in positions where I knew too much. And I thought, I got to tell her story. So.
Oh, man.
So this is called Girl with No Name. And this will be the moment where I'm most missing my band, because they so build the song. They build it in a beautiful way, but it's really the story. Like, everything for me is the heart of it, is the story. So. Everybody knows. Down at Old everybody knows. Down to the scrapyard, melted them down. In this broken town, still haunted by a girl without a name. But the hookers at Old City Hall hold office there today. And everybody knows. Everybody knows. Nobody sees.
Wow. Jen Cass, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for
guys.
playing
It's
those
awesome to
tunes,
talk to you.
all the stories, the history, and what is to come. Oh, we're so grateful for you. Such a piece of Michigan history. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm truly honored. And I know it took a long time, but we finally found a night that worked.
You're a very busy person, and you have a lot of crime to fight.
Yes, I do.
So thank you, Jen.
You bet. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Jen. It was great.
The MMHP is hosted on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and our own Libsyn podcast site. You can also search MMHP 989 on Facebook for up-to-the-minute information, as well as both Dr. J and Sir Fred's album picks of the week, posted every weekend. You can connect with Scott on the web at scottbakermusic.com, Dr. J at michiganrockandrolllegends.com, Sir Fred at fredrife.com, and the Electric Kitsch at electrickitch.com. Brought to you by Michigan Rock and Roll Legends, located both inside the Bay County Historical Museum on Washington Avenue, as well as Scotty's Sandbar on Evergreen Drive in the Bay City Middle Grounds.
On behalf of the hosts, Gary, Dr. J. Johnson, Sir Fred Rife, archivist and videographer Mike Beatty, and myself, this podcast wouldn't be here without Studio 163's Alan Garcia, the voice of MMHP, Mr. Eddie Switek, our sponsor, the Electric Kitsch, all of our guests, and you, the listeners.
You've been listening to the MMHP and the 989. From all of us at the podcast, we want to thank you for tuning
Now,
in.
you mentioned John Lamb. Is that
John
Johnny?
D. Lamb.
Johnny D.
That's right.
Freshman year of college, he lived in the same dorm as him.
I love it.
Really? In fact, John.
And one of the people who I didn't even mention him, I should have, is Drew Nelson. He and Eric are
Drew.
super
I
tight.
love Drew.
And Drew and I used to tour years ago.
I got to play
With
twice
Gorka.
with him at White.
Me and Drew
That's the
Gorka.
guy you turned me on to. I was going to mention him. I had all these ideas like, who could I mention? Well,
Yeah.
Gorka you turned me on to musically.
I have so many funny John Gorka stories. He's a trip. But yeah, it's funny because either you make it or you don't in this business, and I never quite broke. I was right on the cusp, but I know all the people who did. It's so weird. I mean, I toured with all those people, but none of us were anybody.
Right.
So
Drew's right there though too.
Drew was right there. Yeah, I mean he got on Red House because Gorka put him on it, and he he would tour. But I remember he tells a story about coming back he toured Europe, first time he toured Europe, and it was like, God, I'm a successful songwriter. I made it, right? I've actually made it. And he came back and did all of his, paperwork for the money and all that along the way. And it was like, I lost $40.
Oh, no way. That's
I did
the
that whole
story,
tour
huh?
and lost $40.